Shalom from the land of Israel. I'm just getting organized here. Happy Shavuot. It is the Feast of Shavuot. It begins tonight. In fact, I'm going to be leaving. I can't spend too much time here because I am going to I'm going to a moshav. A moshav is so a kibbutz is a collective farm where nobody owns anything. I'm not sure if you could have heard me until then. Let's make sure. Anyways, do me a favor if you're joining us. Please let me know if you can hear me, because there was something that wasn't on. Now it's on. Anyways, happy Shavuot, happy Pentecost. So tonight begins Pentecost, Shavuot, all over the country. We call it Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, here in Israel because it's 7 weeks, 49 days, and then the 50th day, Pentecost means 50, is the day of Shavuot, the actual day of the holiday, which, believe it or not, does not come from Acts 2. Acts 2 was the day of Shavuot. That's the day that God chose to part His Spirit because it was a significant day on the Jewish calendar. So I wanted to give you, so we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. One of the soldiers or commanders that we've been working with as unit, you have been helping. Our partners have been helping buy them shoes and clothes and underwear and everything you can imagine. Fans, we just shipped a bunch of fans into Gaza because it's very hot, 100 degrees. And it's, we're anyways going to his moshav. A moshav is it's not a collective farm like a kibbutz. It's different from a kibbutz in that it everyone owns their own property. So a kibbutz was actually based on socialism, whereas later on people wanted to have the idea of a community together, but they wanted to own their own property. That's a moshav. We're going to the moshav, and one of our commanders, Dovev, we're going to be with his family. And his wife is part of a family of a bunch of sisters that we all work together since October 7th, serving soldiers and evacuees and others. So, and we're going to eat a lot of milk-related products, dairy products. That's what we do on Shavuot. Don't ask me why. Okay, I just want to take a little bit of time today, and again, if you're watching, just let me know if you can hear me. I would appreciate that. I want to talk to you about Brazil. I was in Brazil last week or 2 weeks ago. When did we get there? Late May, 27th, 28th. We were there for a week. Friends, Brazil is on fire. Brazil is in revival. Every place we went, it was just an amazing journey. And I want to explain something. God is going to use the nations to birth revival here in Israel. There's a reason. There is if I can use the word, a debt being paid, but I don't like to use that term. I'd rather talk about us mutually loving each other. So even as the gospel came through Israel on the prayers of Anna and Simeon, who were prototypes. You understand that Anna and Simeon were not the only two people praying for the Messiah to come. They were prototypes of thousands of other Jews that were praying and fasting for the Messiah to come to Israel. And that became a blessing to the Gentiles, to Brazil, to America, to the whole world, right? And yet here in Israel, we need our eyes open. So in the end times, God is going to use the nations. And some nations get this more than others. Like right now, and forgive me, America, I love you, America, and I know we have a lot of Israel-loving Americans. And I am American, so I can say this. There's a lot of folks, a lot of ministers that are very focused on praying for America. You know what the best way to see America blessed? Pray for Israel. As you pray for Israel, America, I know you're worried about the elections. God has all these things under control. Can I? Well, I don't even want to say this right now. I have some other things to say, but this one was save it for a different video. This is about Brazil. America, pray for Israel, and God's blessing will come on you. But in Brazil, there is such an openness. I mean, every meeting we were in was, I don't know, the conference we're at was nearly 2,000 young people. Then we spoke at a church that has 2 services. And so the one we were in, it felt like about 500, 600, 700 people. I don't know exactly. And when they worship, I've not seen this. I mean, it's passionate energy. I felt a little bit backslidden. I mean, they're just going after God. Now, why was I in Brazil? It's funny because I had no plans to go there. It wasn't on our calendar this year, but I made a video. Many of you know, sadly, about what happened at IHOP in KC, where the leader of IHOP was found to have been involved in multiple what I would label adulterous relationships. And some of the accusations are even from those who were teenagers at the time, and the massive impact on the body of believers worldwide. And in December, I went to our leaders, my leaders, people that I relate to, my peers. But if I'm going to talk about something controversial, I want to get input and advice. And I said, I really feel like the Lord wants me to make a video about this issue, not to be salacious, not to gossip, but what can we learn from it? What are we supposed to learn from this tragedy? And I made this video, and a fellow by the name of Vinny Sousa in Brazil emails me and says, I watched this video, it really blessed me. Would you come to Brazil and talk about these issues? Clergy, sexual abuse. And so what I didn't know is that Vinny is part of a group called Tikkun Brazil. Now, what is Tikkun Brazil? So there is a fellow by the name of Harold Walker, very dear brother that I've known for many years. And Harold Walker started a group. I just didn't understand the impact. He was reading our books, primarily impacted by Asher Intrater, who is also one of my primary mentors in life. His books, Covenant Relationships. They've published 2 of our books, Birth Pangs and The Coming End Time Awakening, into Portuguese, now in Brazil. And Harold started this ministry called Tikkun Brazil. I thought it was more of a gathering of sort of like-minded. I didn't understand it was an actual network. This has now grown, I think, to like 60 churches. And when I say churches, I don't mean 30 people. I mean, some of them 1,000 people, 2,000 people. Some of them having, one of them I'm going to talk about later has a podcast with 2 million subscribers. So as I accepted the invitation, they put some other meetings around it. So when we got there, we did the first 2 days, and I was with Dwayne Roberts. Dwayne Roberts is, he was the original whistleblower in this whole issue with IHOP. He's a former leader in IHOP. And he went down to Brazil in the mid-teens, somewhere around, 2016, something like that, 13 maybe. And he started a branch of International House of Prayer in Brazil that has grown into a very large ministry. It's led by this fellow now, Vinny Sousa, who also has a church down there that I think has roughly 1,500 people, something like that. And they pray. I'm mentioning these numbers not to impress you. It's not, forgive me, but it's not like your typical mega church where people come in for an hour and they get out as quickly as they can. The message is 20 minutes. No, these people, 1,500, mostly young people, mostly in their 20s and early 30s, and they come in and they go after God. They want God to show up. They want revival. And people are coming to faith left and right in Brazil. I'm here in Israel. That's what we need. That's why I'm making this video, is because the reason I go to Brazil, and I'm going to Scotland next week, and Elon and I, we're going to be going to Holland and Belgium, is to raise up prayer for Israel. Because we can evangelize all day long here, but if God does not remove the blinders, if he does not take away the hardness of heart that Paul speaks about in Romans chapter 11, we will not see Romans chapter 11, verse 26, Kol Yisrael Yivashah, all Israel will be saved. We're not going to see that unless God moves. It's not going to be because we have the best evangelists, and obviously we're going to be faithful. We have a ministry called Shalanu TV, where it's Hebrew speaking, but and we've seen fruit. We have seen people come to faith through the television channel, but it's slow, it's hard. We're plowing dry ground. We need Brazil, America, Russia, Ukraine, China. Hello, China. We need the nations. This is the biggest battle, other than the actual second coming itself, the battle for revival in Israel is probably the greatest spiritual warfare battle between the destruction of the temple and the coming of the Lord. And I may change that later. I just said that spontaneously, so don't say, well, Ron, it was, but I think it is, though, because the revival in Israel has to happen before Yeshua comes back. Zechariah 12:10, where they look upon the one whom they have pierced and mourn for him as one mourns for, that's the inhabitants of Jerusalem, right? The house of David. And when they say, Jesus said, you will not see me again, who was he talking to? Was he in Nebraska? No. Was he in Sao Paulo? No. He was in Jerusalem speaking to Orthodox Jews and saying, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. That's how you welcome somebody in Hebrew. If you come to my house on Shabbat, I say, Baruch haba, welcome. Blessed is he who comes, welcome. Yeshua says, I'm not coming back until the Jews of Jerusalem welcome me. It's like with David. Remember, after Absalom, David was upset because his own kinsman, Judah, did not come to bring him. He wasn't coming back until his brothers came, not just the other tribes. In the same way, Yeshua's not coming back. And I see, Ronan, you can hear me because you said amen. So thank you for that. Yeshua is not coming back until the Jews of Jerusalem recognize him as Messiah. So it's the greatest battle before the coming of the Lord. And it's not going to be a prayer of 2 or 3 people. It's going to take the nations blessing Israel, the nations contending in spiritual warfare for Jerusalem, for Israel. And so that's why we go to Brazil. That's why we're going to Belgium next month to do a seminar. And we're doing a whole conference in Scotland next week. I mean, we're trying. I just want to stay home. I'm so tired right now. I'm jet lagged from coming home. I didn't sleep. I fell asleep at 3 a.m. last night. And so if you want to pray for me, I would appreciate it. That would be a great blessing, that I would get a good night's sleep tonight and the next night and the next night. It's really, I don't enjoy travel. I want to be in Israel. I want to be here with my people, especially during this time that we're at war. By the way, as you know, our 4 hostages were rescued on Saturday. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see a picture of a lifeguard and a little writing that somebody wrote from, what's the name of it? Anyways, when you go there, you'll see the name of the website I got it from. But she talked about being on the beach when the lifeguard announced, and the beach was full, 100 degrees, Saturday, day off, and he announced that these 4 Israelis were rescued, and everybody just goes crazy. It's beautiful to watch. Yes, amen. And then some of you might be saying, yeah, but did you hear about how many Palestinians died in that operation? That's horrible. That's tragic. I don't believe the numbers from Hamas. Hamas are terrorists. Hamas are liars. So, but I'm sure there was collateral damage when the Israelis were rescued. You know, that could have all been avoided. Let our people go. Hamas, let our people go. Stop fighting. Lay down your weapons. Let the hostages go free. But the number one responsibility of the government of a nation state is the security of their people. So it is heartbreaking that innocent people died in Gaza. I don't want that. I don't want one more Palestinian to die in Gaza. So the way we can avoid that, let our people go. Let them go. Let them come home. This could stop today. All right, Brazil. So what did we do there? So the first 2 days, Dwayne and I, we tag teamed in teaching leaders. We both taught for an hour, and we talked about sexual purity. We talked about clergy sexual abuse, about how to stay free. And then on the third morning, I spent like 4 hours with pastors from this network called Tikkun Brazil. So these are Gentile pastors who have churches. They're not messianic, but they've taken our name, Tikkun, because they like our values. And they love Israel, and they believe in covenant relationships, power of the Holy Spirit, faith orientation, and they believe it is their role to bless Israel, to bless the Jewish people. So I could not believe with the honor, that how I was received. It was beautiful, and I love these guys. I mean, I just fell in love with them, and I told them very clearly, we're in Israel, but we're not over you. We are together. We are peers. We are equal. We love you. You love us. We bless you. You bless us. And they're just and these are men of God. These are serious men of God, women of God with hundreds and some thousands of people in their churches, and they have an alignment towards Israel. They want to bless Israel. So we talked for like 2 hours in the morning, and then in the afternoon we talked about 10. I'm going to probably write this up. We have the 10 points written up, but I thought it would take me 10 minutes to go through these 10 points. 2 hours later, we finished. And what was really great is I was talking about clergy sexual abuse. And just to be clear, clergy sexual abuse is not adultery. It is adultery, but it's worse than adultery. If a preacher goes out into a grocery store and meets a woman and has an affair, that's adultery. That's bad. Don't ever do it. Clergy sexual abuse is when somebody who is in your congregation, who looks up to you as a pastor or an evangelist, where there is a power differential. That's sexual abuse. That's not just adultery. You are abusing somebody. You're abusing your position of power. Don't do it, right? So we talked about how to deal with accusations. And again, it was like 2.5 hours and incredible questions. And I had 2 psychologists in the room that I didn't expect them to be there. And they introduced me as an expert on this subject. And I said, no. I'm not an expert on this subject. I'm just somebody who really cares a lot about the subject. In fact, there's a great book I'm reading. I think her name is Diane Landsberg. Let me just check that on my Kindle. Give me a second here. Kindle. This book, I haven't quite finished it yet, but here it comes. This book, she's an expert, and her name is, just a second. Here it is. Yep, Diane Langberg. Diane Langberg, Langberg. Redeeming Power, Understanding Authority and Abuse in the Church. Wow, what an amazing book. But I had 2 psychologists in the room with me who do deal with this issue, do deal with issues of chronic narcissism, people who are sociopaths, who can enter into these relationships and feel no guilt, feel like they deserve it, somehow justify it. And so we had 2.5 hours. It was super intense. And then I went and spoke at the conference. This was the original reason that I was invited. So this was incredible. I ended up preaching on Israel and anti-Semitism out of my book, Birth Pangs. Many of you have heard that message, where 4 years ago I wrote in Birth Pangs, my second to last chapter said, Israel will be the new abortion. And my point was that the day would come where where you stand on Israel would be as divisive and controversial as where you stand on abortion. That the issue of where you stand on Israel would be more controversial than the issue of abortion. And where I grew up in America, that's probably the most polarizing issue, even today, until October the 7th, when people like Harvard and Columbia came out on October the 7th, before Israel even responded, and supported Hamas. Which is, we're not going to go there. We talk about that a lot. So I preach 1,800 young people praying for Israel. It's making a commitment to remember Israel, to pray for Israel, to pray for the hostages. And that place was rocking. It was really, really an amazing conference, 3 days. And then we went to a church called One Church. There is a song called Yeshua. I'm not going to sing it right now, but there's an 18-minute version on YouTube if you Google it. When I went through a year of depression. Many of you know that. I've never even fully unpacked that with you. One day I'm going to. But I went through a year of depression, and it ended in Scotland when I went there to just shut myself in a retreat center and seek God for a couple weeks. And I feel God just speaking about it. It was such a beautiful, beautiful time of breakthrough. But that song I had playing over and over, the Yeshua song, Well, the guy who wrote that song, I don't want to say his name, Alessandro, I believe is his name. What's his last name? I'm going to tell you. Hang on. Alessandro, where are you? There it is. Alessandro Villas Boas. He wrote that song. He was a pastor in Brazil. Now he's in London, but I think they have 5 congregations in Brazil. And then he moved to London to plant a congregation there. Well, he wrote that song, and I met him right as I came out of this depression, got free. And again, long story, we'll share it one day. I was preaching somewhere, and somebody told me that the guy who wrote that song was there. And so I told him, your song was one of the things that brought me out of a year long of just, and if you've never dealt with depression, you don't want to. It was a very, very difficult. I had to go through it. There's a lot the Lord had to teach me. He humbled me. He broke me. A lot of pride, workaholic, getting my priorities straight. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I went through it. But so Alessandro, we preached in one of their congregations on that morning. They had just gone through a very difficult time, and I won't go into all the details now, but their pastors were just really broken that morning because of what they had gone through. And the Lord gave me a word about servant leadership, and we had just a great time. So from there, we then went to another city in a church called Jesus Copy. And I don't know how to say Douglas's last name, but he's the pastor. It's a Goncalves. I'm sure that's not very good Portuguese, but Douglas is the leader of Jesus Copy. His father is the James Dobson of Brazil. And so he was in his dad's church, and he felt led to go out and start a church. His dad was with him, laid hands on him. And that church is now going gangbusters. They're outgrown their building. They have to have several services. And he has a podcast with 2 million subscribers, right? So we did an interview on clergy sexual abuse for about an hour and 10, 15 minutes. That is going to go live this week. You see, in Brazil, it is not accepted to confront a pastor. You know, a pastor falls into sin, often there are no consequences. In fact, the week I arrived, there was just a 60 Minutes or, that type of show where they exposed a pastor who not only committed adultery, but was violent with their housekeeper and with his own wife. And that was on the news. So it's in everybody's consciousness. But again, it's kind of a touch not God's anointed, which had nothing to do with pastors and accountability. That had to do with David not wanting to take into his own hands making himself king. He wasn't going to kill Saul so he would become king. He wanted God to make him king. And again, if you want to compare yourself to an evil king like Saul, go ahead. I would rather be accountable. I would rather people confront me and have the opportunity. Remember what happened to Saul? The Lord rejected him. I don't want to be rejected by God. I submit myself to other brothers. And so that's really a new concept in the Brazilian church. It's kind of like the royal pastor. And certainly the pastors in Ticum, Brazil are being trained by Harold and others in this, a more humble way. So I'm going to end there by really asking you to pray for this podcast, because again, we're talking, tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that will be hearing about why we have to take clergy sexual abuse serious. It crushes me when I hear of somebody being abused by a leader, by a pastor. It just, when it's a teen, when it's a child, we just can't have that. And we certainly can't have a culture that covers for it. So I need to go because it's getting late here in the Holy Land, and we got to go over to these folks' house to celebrate Shavuot. It's a great holiday here. May God pour out his Spirit on the land of Israel. We certainly need that. Well, God bless you guys. Have a great Shavuot yourself. And by the way, I have a teaching on Shavuot. Today's not really the day of Shavuot. It was 2 days ago on Sunday. Why? Well, go look at my teaching. It's on my Facebook page. It's on my YouTube page. I had somebody call me, a pastor from England, call me up and said they watched that video. And again, honestly, I did not think it was that great of a video, but they called me up and they said it just awoken all kinds of, it blessed them. And, but Shavuot is supposed to be 50 days after the first Sabbath, after Passover. The Free Press, I just got their email. That was the name of the thing on my Facebook page I couldn't think of a few minutes ago, Free Press. So if you want to know why it was 2 days ago, because it coincides with the resurrection of Yeshua. Yeshua rose from the dead on the day of the first fruit offering. That's why Paul calls him the first fruits from among the dead. And it's on that day that you start counting. Well, for some reason, the rabbis decided, no, you start counting on Passover. You make Passover, I guess that would make this coming Sunday the day. You know what? Go watch the video and let me know if it blesses you. Hey, listen, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. It is a privilege to be able to come to you. And God bless you. And I will talk to you soon. Shalom.